Hello, everybody, and welcome to 3 Point Perspective, the podcast about illustration, how to do it, how to make a living at it, and how to make an impact in the world with your art. I'm Anthony Wheeler.
I'm Lee White.
And I am David Hohn. All three of us are professional illustrators, and for the last 25 years have worked with every major publisher and publication in the biz. We've published over 50 books. I feel like it's more than that with this group.
It's a big
and have all taught illustration at the universities. That is true.
That is correct. Each week we come to you guys with fantastic illustrator interviews. We interviewed James Gurney this morning.
Oh my God.
Or
that's a get.
Great questions from people just like you. Sometimes we agree, sometimes you argue, but each time you learn something brand spanking new.
So you butchered the intro.
Dude, man, that was a masterful ad-lib.
You know what happens is after 300 episodes, when you goof up the intro, there's inevitably going to be a comment on YouTube.
There's no goof up. How did I goof it up?
It's not, first of all, it's not generally what we say. Second of all, we don't always mention James Gurney in the intros.
I'm going to mention James Gurney.
You can mention James Gurney.
Yeah, I mean, you're just jelly.
I am super jelly. I didn't get invited for this for various reasons. Real quick before we get into the show, how was it? I know people are going to be able to listen to it here or have already listened to it, but how was it? Was it pretty cool?
It was good. I mean, it was amazing. He's an icon. I mean, he's sort of a living legend in illustration. So to get to interview somebody like that's really cool. And then he's super humble and he's a great storyteller. So he's kind of an ideal guest. I actually asked him to take your place, Anthony. But he said no.
That is the most unfair thing that you have said to me today. And then the day is still early. Well, I'm excited to listen to it. I generally don't like to listen to episodes that you're on, but I will definitely check that one out. This is the energy, David, that Lee and I bring to these shows. We had a couple of weeks ago. We had to do an episode where it was just Lee and I, and it
2
was
Point Perspective. That's right.
It was like two cats howling at the moon in the middle of the night. It was pretty incredible. Now, for the folks that are listening at home, there might be a new voice on the podcast today, and that voice is coming from this person named David. Hi, David. How are you?
Hey, how's it going, guys?
So, David, we have all known each other for quite a while. We were actually just prior to the show mentioning that you and Lee have known each other since what, 2009?
2007, I think.
I think something like that. Yeah, I don't even keep track.
And you're with all of that history, you're still willing to be on this program?
Yeah.
Well, what's weird is I'm only 21. So
all right.
We met when I was just a baby.
So you guys were at preschool together. David, really quickly, and then Lee and I will poke at you here for a little bit, but really quickly, just for folks that have not met you before via the podcast, or maybe over at SVS.com, learn.com, or just read any of your picture books or projects or anything like that. Like if you got into an elevator right now with some like major celebrity, like James Earl Jones, if he was still alive, like what would your quick 12-second elevator pitch be to introduce yourself?
Wow, that's a real choice there. I would not be able to resist doing the the Darth Vader voice to start with, because who can avoid that? Oh, let's see. Honestly, picture book illustrator. That's really where my passion is. It's what I did. It's what I once I figured out it was a job when I was like 12. I was like, yes, please, and it was just sort of a direct line to that. Everything that I do now really supports that. I teach at the university level here in Portland. And I teach because it just makes me a better illustrator all the way around. The biggest change probably is, I think in college, I thought I was always going to be a picture book illustrator paired with an author. And, it was really during the time that Lee and I shared a studio. I think that we both kind of realized hey, you can do that. But if you're going to be focused exclusively on picture books, you really do want to be an author illustrator. And so that's been over the last really 10 years, that's been the bigger goal for me as I've acquired an agent, as I've spent time, when I'm not doing the books that I am paired with. That's the rest of my days, weekends, evenings, all that is working on stories that I'm.
Who's your agent?
My agent is James McGowan over at Bookends Literary.
James is pretty great, huh?
Yeah. That is a good partnership. I'm liking it a lot.
Yeah. I met James years ago. My agent Mo was over at Bookends just until recently, and then she left, and I followed her over to a new agency. But James has always just been a super rock solid dude. Yeah,
that was the connection that I'd always had with you. That we were with the same agency, but you have since moved.
I have. It was a tricky situation because I signed with Mo 6 years ago, and we kind of had like a not she and I, but just like in terms of where I was at, we signed, had a couple of projects come up. I had some strange stuff going on in my life where I wasn't in the space to be able to work on a book project. And then things slowed down. Then COVID hit. And then it has just been one of these things where she's brought a whole bunch of things to my plate, but it just hasn't been good timing and sort of all that sort of stuff. But when Mo recently decided to move on and move to a different agency, she gave me the choice of like, I could stay with Bookends, but I don't have a lot of that capital that I had prior, like when I had signed with her. So even though I might have a nice relationship or two, I didn't know if anybody would be willing to, to take me on as to work with.
Sure.
And so I decided, but beyond that, I really like my relationship with her, and so it made a lot of sense to go follow her. And now we're cooking some stuff up. So, but yeah,
by the way, that's just a fascinating thing. I know that agents come up on this podcast from a fairly regular basis. I was unaware that the situation you described could happen.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Just that an agent, like in the process of moving, that you were kind of given the option of staying at the agency or staying with the agent.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things that had never come up, but it's just an interesting thing for anybody who's listening to this, that you're thinking like, hey, let's pursue this agent side of things. Just know that there are some, it's surprising. It's more malleable than you think. It's certainly more malleable than SCBWI led me to believe when I was going to those to those conferences where they were like, the agent stands up and they're talking about how your agent relationship is going to last longer than your marriage, which in some cases, I'm sure
probably true, right? Yeah.
But they can also be, quite short, and they can be a little bit more volatile than you'd expect. So it's always interesting.
It is. It's kind of fascinating. Like my relationship with Mo, the way that has been carved out is that she and I will continue to work with each other, even if I don't have a manuscript to bring to the table or a dummy book to bring to the table. But she's also not going to put an enormous amount of effort shopping my work if I'm not matching that intensity and things like that.
Got it.
And I find that to be a very safe thing, because I've been really focused on building just a whole different aspect of my business the last 2 years. And so it's nice though to have that safety blanket. And then beyond that, she's just a fantastic person. But it was it was definitely a little scary though, because I didn't know if anybody would be interested in wanting to take me on over there. And it just didn't seem like the risk was the right risk at the time. It's tricky how that comes together. I wanted to ask you though, when you were a kid, you mentioned that you knew that you wanted to draw picture books. Like, what were the kind of books that you were looking at when you were a kid that like really got you into it? Do you remember?
Oh boy, yeah, sure. Charles Santor.
Okay.
I think I remember coming across his Aesop's Fables. I was big into kind of the golden age of illustrators. So Arthur Rackham, Edmund Dulac, like all those guys kind of thing. I was aware of the golden age of American illustrators, all the guys from the Brandywine School, N.C. Wyeth, just that whole
And this is all at the age of 5, right?
Sure. No. I mean, at the age of 5, all I knew were the Oz books. Yeah. So those guys were just like, the thing. So, I was really,
It's funny because you don't really, I mean, you get into this industry and you've looked at thousands of illustrators, but there's a few right in the beginning that really do leave their stamp on you. And I can see your work in, for those of you guys who are just listening, you can see what we're looking at on YouTube if you want to check us out there. But I'm doing a screen share of Charles Santor, who is 84 years old now, and it definitely has David vibes. I mean, yours is different now. You've updated it, in my opinion, but the initial grain is still there. It's funny how that happens.
Oh yeah. So Rackham, the Irish illustrator PJ Lynch. Oh boy, I just had his books out for everything all through college. And I was working real hard to those were the people in high school and college that I was actively looking to emulate. And even start off my career, like early stuff, my portfolio coming out, had that very, I would hire models, I would get costumes, the fairy tale. My very first book was this book called Finding Fairies, which was about fairy cultures from all over the world. And I was just like, yes, please. And, it was just, I spent every waking hour that I wasn't at my full-time job, the one that paid my rent. On weekend evenings and weekends, just working on this fairy book that was very, very rendered. Honestly, between you and me, overly rendered.
I don't think so. I think it was a great book. I'd love to at some point, maybe not during this podcast, but talk about what happened later with that publisher and that book.
Sure, we can bring that one up later.
It's an interesting story, the life of a book and how things change and whatnot. And anyway, for a different time.
What year did you publish your first picture book?
Finding Fairies, I think, is a 2002 or maybe a 2003 book.
Okay. So then there was that. And then you and Lee met roughly about 4 years later.
Something like that. Yeah.
And then when did you start teaching?
Right around 2006 or 2007. It was right around the same time. In fact, Lee and I met because Lee had just moved to Portland, and there was this little illustrators group that was meeting once a month. And I think, Lee, we connected via SCVWI. It was great. I think you'd moved and you were like, hey, you're here in Portland. And I was like, come out to this little illustrators group that was meeting up. And we had just started meeting at the Art Institute. And
that's right.
I was we were kind of both in the building, and two adjunct positions came up at roughly the same time, and we just both started teaching a class there.
Yeah. And then when did you guys got a studio together? You said multiple studios. Now Lee has traveled all over the world, and he's been on the run from the law for quite a while, but because you've moved multiple times. Yeah, justifiably.
Caravaggio-esque lifestyle.
I think more Gauguin-esque, but okay, go ahead.
You don't know my past, man.
Wouldn't that be great though? Like, you guys have broken bread so many times, yet you really don't know his dark.
For those of you guys who don't know, Caravaggio was painting these amazing murals, huge paintings, while on the run from the law after he had killed somebody.
Oh wait, I didn't know that. Holy crap! Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That sounds a lot like my uncle Larry Miller. He's part of the Herman Miller chair family.
Oh, comedy fans, that's called a callback.
It's a callback too. Yeah. So the other thing that we haven't mentioned today is that our friends over at SVSLEARN.com are actually listening to us record this podcast live. So this is some of the bits that we were doing before we jumped onto the show today. Now, David, I have your portfolio up here. I thought Lee was going to be a good friend and share it with everybody, but it absolutely didn't happen. So I'm on your book page right here. So these are some of the titles that you've released. So Headstrong Hallie, Tuesdays at the Castle. We have talked a bunch on the podcast about God Gave Us Family, God Gave Us Christmas. I think one time on the show I went over to Amazon just to look at sort of like how many copies some of these things, or how many ratings these books have had, of which like God Gave Us Christmas has like a bazillion 5-star ratings, which is pretty cool. How many books in total do you think you have published here at this point?
I gotta update this page.
Yeah, man.
I'm gonna say something like whatever's on there. I think there's like 5 or 6 that are currently missing. And then I did this whole chapter book series that just hasn't been posted up there, just because it's not the kind of work that like this. My style has shifted away from that particular work. So I don't know at this point. Can't keep track of it.
Is some of the work that is up at the top here in your portfolio, is this more consistent with the stuff that you're loving to make right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Everything that's on the portfolio page is the books. They kind of archive things that, it's been 20 years. So
yeah, right.
To that end, I think it came up on the podcast recently, something like the project you wish you could go back and redo. There's a book that I did really early on for Charles Bridge that was, at the time, of course, I was doing the best I possibly could. And then just speaking of how you evolve and how you just get better at your craft, I would kill to go back and redo that. Like it was the second or maybe third book that I ever did.
Oh,
just
really?
Because there's such a better book in there. Now I can't complain. It's this little math book for Charles Bridge. It's called Zachary Zormer, Shape Transformer. I don't think that guy's on there. Yeah. That little guy's been selling away. He generates, a couple $1,000 in royalties every year.
Jeez.
Yay. But at the same time, I would love to.
David is somebody who actually had the royalty scenario work out. So that's why he's so good with the legal stuff. And that's why I'm so burned, is because the royalties have never worked out for me. I get checks for $2.64. And so I'm always like, my philosophy now is get as much as you can up front because it's all you're ever going to get. And David's like leaning back going, you'll get $1 million later.
Well, he's in his own castle in Scotland right now. And he's
hanging out with Herman Miller.
The Cheer Factory people. Yeah.
But to that end, this is something that Lee and I have vigorously debated. Speaking of, if we want to get into that discussion, we will have a genuine fight. Because and neither is wrong, but neither is right. It really depends on where you're coming from. And I think it's it's a really valuable discussion that just never really gets had publicly about that advance versus royalty situation. Yeah, it's interesting.
Just in a nutshell, for those of you guys who are wondering, here's my current take on that. Before, when David and I were first discussing this, I could see more of David's point of view. I mean, he's an example of somebody who the royalty system is working. But the publishing model now is why I lean against it. It's not that I don't want it to work or that I don't think it could work, but the way that they judge success of a book, it has to be almost furious and almost immediate, in my opinion now, for something to stay on the shelf to be purchased. Because there's so many things refilling the shelf, so hard to get shelf space. And then there's so much competition for consumers' dollars that I think it's just harder for it to work out. I mean, it's great when it does. And that's sort of, I consider it almost a lottery, definitely not a guarantee.
That's totally true. I still disagree with you on it, only because
you make all the money.
So not true, but the books have these long shelf lives, and a book that is earning royalties looks better to future projects.
Of course.
And so these books that have these huge advances but burn out, just like you're saying, there's again we're gonna get into it, and there goes 45 minutes, man. But it's an interesting discussion. If you want to prep it, actually, it would be kind of cool to dedicate something and prep it and bring some case studies. Again, not to prove that I'm actually right, but just to show the audience that
the case studies is my 25 books that haven't earned me a penny since I did them.
Have you ever thought about just being better?
I blame the writers. When in doubt, blame the writers.
I like how you just ruined your relationship with 25 people and probably 7 publishers.
You suck.
Yeah. It's amazing. So David, of your sort of long, illustrious career, do you, I think we're all parents here, and you're not supposed to choose your favorites. Which one is your favorite? Which is your favorite book that you have made, and why would it be your favorite book?
That's a great, okay. All right. Yeah. Yeah, I got a favorite. And to Lee's point, this one has not sold particularly well. I do not expect to earn out the royalty on it.
So you only got a Lamborghini out of it. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Not even close. It's by the same author as the God Gave Us. So Lisa Bergen.
Okay.
She started a new series. We did 2 books in it. It is Nana the Great. So Nana the Great. And I liked the first one. but we did the sequel, Nana the Great Goes Camping. And I just I was able to flex the kind of visual narrative storytelling. Yeah. Had a really good time with this one. End pages, like the front end pages on this one are like a collage of photos of the trip that Nana and the kids take. And if you're really smart and sharp, the front end pages actually add more storytelling to what happens inside the book. And then the back end pages are the photos of what mom and dad were doing while the kids were on, because we all have kids, right? So if your child goes off to grandma's house, it's like, woo, this is happening. And so inevitably this is happening is you just go to bed early because God.
Yeah, right. Just go to sleep. Yep.
But I had a really good time with that. And there's a little visual, sort of a short little visual narrative there. And then just setting up these secondary narratives. So, of course you're being true to the text, but deepening what's happening within the text. Like the text talks about the relationship, but then I get to add another level to that. But even beyond that, you get to do these secondary narratives with other people that are in the campgrounds, animals that are sort of popping in and out. So it's just this, it was a great time. And I really felt like, all right, I got this. Like being this narrative illustrator thing is working for me.
Is this digital or traditional, this cover?
This I'm almost working exclusively digital these days. It's a Photoshop watercolor colored pencil using Photoshop techniques.
Like I do a lot of watercolor and digital art. Just come on, this is unfair, man. Like, look how incredible this is.
Well, it doesn't hurt. I mean, David's a great watercolor painter just by itself, so it adds to it for sure.
Yeah, Jenny in the comments over at SVSLEARN.com is saying, I want to be this Nana one day. Yeah, that's amazing. I love the way that you, for the folks that are not listening or that are listening to this in your car, your headphones while you're making dinner. I've got the image of this up on the YouTube. I just love the lighting on this and how you're able to steer the eye all around this cover. It's also a really great use of open in sort of that negative space in between Nana and the fire. And that piece just gets to breathe a little bit more. It's a really effective cover. It's cool.
If that was my son, he would be lighting everything on fire. Camping, nothing will last.
Oh my gosh! So we have Nana the Great. We could have Papa the Worst, and it's just where anarchy reigns supreme. Now, David, before we transition to our next topic, I want to poke at you a little bit and ask you. So, what are some of the things that you're working on right now? So, outside of teaching, Lee had mentioned that you're working on like some different projects and dummy books and stuff like that. What's that been like here this last year or two?
I literally just before we started, I got a little email from the art director for the book that'll be out in the fall. I'm in that stage, so I just wrapped up a book. It is The Dog That Saved the Bees. This one is it's another book that I've done with Sleeping Bear. They're great. As you guys know, like you do one book with a publisher, and provided that the project goes well, you inevitably do 2, 3, 4. That's how you end up.
You try to overstay your welcome. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, I feel like isn't it like Peter Brown has only ever worked with Little Brown, right? Like, isn't he with like the same agent or the same editor? Maybe I'm wrong about that, but it feels like once you sort of get a really good groove going, you can kind of work with the same people over and over again, which is great. Anyway, so this is with Sleeping Bear, and there's that stage that they never talked about in my picture book classes. Do we talk about this do you guys talk about this in Children's Book Pro? That stage between when you submit the finished art and when all the little changes that you didn't think were going to happen come in?
Oh yeah.
Okay, you guys have such a good program for that thing. I'm in that phase right now where you, hey, that's cool. I didn't even realize they had that up. Awesome.
This is why I host when Jake isn't here, because I can figure out how to screen share.
You got to
let me do a little shout out to David just while we're looking at this, and also the grandma book cover, the Nana book cover. Both David and Will have mastered the art of atmospheric perspective, no matter how deep the scene actually goes. And so one of the things that I've seen you using more and more actually over the past probably 5 years is, here's my subject matter. And then, it could be 20 feet or 200 feet or 2 miles, that whatever's behind that character gets pushed back in terms of contrast and value and saturation. And so, and Will Terry does that really well as
Will's great at that stuff.
Yeah. And all it does is just bring the focus to the main characters, and you can still have as much detail as you want in the scene. It's just reduced into the background a little bit more, blends in, but there's still all the stuff that you get to illustrate. So it's kind of this perfect balance. So great job on that. Something that we keep pushing for our students too, is don't include everything at full value. Think about what you want to focus on, and then let the rest of the stuff kind of play second fiddle, so to speak.
100%. Is this your third book with this publisher?
I want to say, I think, yeah.
Which publisher is this? I've done a book with them too. Sleeping Bear. They're good.
Yeah, I mean, they're great. They're really good to work with. Advances are not huge, but again, long shelf life and just a really. Didn't you
illustrate the Bible? Speaking of long shelf life, how's that for a segue?
Good Lord.
Wait, is that your next project?
No.
No, you did do that though. I'm not dreaming.
Lee is recognizing that it was part of that God Gave Us series, and one of the things that they wanted to do was an illustrated Bible. And it was easily the longest project I'd ever done. It was like 130 pages. It was like 5 picture books.
Wow.
All at once. That was a fascinating process. Super cool. But back to what's going on right now. That book, The Dog That Saved the Bees, that one is done. But I'm in that stage where they're like, hey, we noticed this, or we need this extra piece of art for the jacket flap, or that kind of thing. And so the email that I just got was hey, there's I can't even quite remember. I have to go back through my thing. It was a really simple change. What are you doing, Lee? I swear to God.
It's like when intrusive thoughts and ADHD come together, is what Lee is doing on the screen right now.
Right now.
If you dust my face, he was
telling a great story. Now I'm gonna have to edit this out.
No. Okay? Keep with your story.
It's impossible.
And then beyond that, it's this very small change, but it's one of those things like just get it done, because it's kind of slides under the radar just a little bit because it's so small. And then beyond that, it is all dummies all the time for me. I'm working on ironically, it's another dog book that I'm writing. That is just about how it's kind of a metaphor for how people age and how we try to maintain the quality of life for the people and the pets, in this case, that we care about as they get older.
Awesome.
How many, obviously every dummy book has a varying degree of success. So, in some years you'll have a lot of success, other years it just won't work out. On average though, like over the course of a year, maybe 2 years, how many dummy books are you putting together, sending to your agent to go pitch? Like, how often are you taking those projects out?
I am slow on this. One a year, sometimes, especially if the paying projects, the ones where I'm paired with an author, if that comes in, it'll be one every 2 years, which is why it's been this very, very slow process. The other part of it is it is painful to get no's.
Yeah.
Getting no's sucks. It reminds me so much of what it must take to be a musician, to be an actor, to walk into the room and hear the no to your face. I mean, at least I'm getting a no that's filtered through my agent and an email and all that kind of stuff.
Watered down a little bit.
Yeah, he's watering it down for sure.
Yeah, and I've got 20 years of a reasonable level of success. Like I don't know. I've thought about this a lot. I don't know if when I got out of school and I'm 24 years old and I'm writing my dummy and I'm putting it up and I'm sending it out there, I don't know if my ego could have handled all the no's. It might have crushed me. So this is, and I say that only because, I know that there are some of, certainly there's the students that I'm working with that are that age, and I am encouraging them to put themselves out there in that way. I wish I had done more of that at that early stage of my career. But just know that I am completely sympathetic with how painful it is to get that no.
We talked about it on a previous podcast.
Did you?
Where we were talking about the rate of success. And as an illustrator, you got to be comfortable with, I feel like if I do 10 projects, or if I've got my mindset on doing 10 things, I'll be happy if 2 of those things happen.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's a good percentage.
Now that's you 20 years into your career. How about you 3 or 4 years into your career?
Oh, I mean, it was almost all what happened early in the career is funny. And I'm curious if you guys had this happen too, is you get an email of interest. And in my opinion, especially coming from other things, when that initial conversation happens, that generally means that something's going to happen. So I'd get this inquiry email, some kind of correspondence, and I would run to my wife or run to my friends and say, "Oh my gosh, I'm illustrating this book. I'm doing this movie. They're going to make a video game out of my work. Oh my gosh." And then it all died almost every single time. It never went anywhere. And so now I realized until I signed the contract, I just don't get excited about it.
That's fair.
But you're also kind of dead inside now.
That's true.
Yeah. So that's also something that
I don't, without being too blasphemous. This is where I bring religion into our conversation. I was just thinking about this because of David's Bible story that he did, that a picture book dummy that would definitely sell. Did you know Jesus had brothers?
What?
Yeah, he had 4 brothers and apparently 2 sisters as well. And think about being Jesus Christ's brother.
Oh my! I was about to finish that, but I stopped.
Every single time you try to accomplish something, it's always like, well, you're no Jesus.
Did you die for everyone's sins? I don't know.
The other thing I was thinking about with that, just practicalities around that character or that person in history, is they knew he's the son of God, yet he still went on to have a trade. He still became a carpenter. Like, how do you maintain your focus when you know that's your ultimate path, but you got to learn to be a carpenter? So somewhere somebody had a chair made by Jesus. See, I bring it back.
I just want to point out again, I do my best here. This would have never happened with Jake or Will.
Jake would never allow this conversation to go in this direction.
I'm just saying he had 4 brothers and 2 sisters. If somebody wants to write a dummy, I want to know about those characters.
I went to, funny enough, so I went to Amazon and I typed in David Hohn and the Bible to see what I could find. And this is how I found Zachary Zormer, Shape Transformer. My only real question to you, David, is how come Zachary looks just like you? He has the same nose as you. Were you the model for this?
Jake. That looks like young Jake to me.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. No, actually, on this one, I hired, quote unquote, I asked an entire 4th grade class over here by where I live here in Portland. I went to the elementary school, which was such a thing, because it had been 25 years. I walked into the school. This is before I had my child. And so now I'm like old hat when it comes to this, elementary schools, but it had been this really long time. So I walked into the school because I want to ask this class to get models for this, because it all takes place inside a classroom. And I just remember walking into the school and that cafeteria smell that you have in elementary school just hit me. And I was like, I just went right back. Like it was a straight Ratatouille Pixar moment where my, the camera zoomed in and I was like back at 3rd grade eating like the cafeteria pizza. Anyway, sorry, little tangent there. I went in and I chatted with a teacher and I said, this is what I'm doing. And would your class be willing to model? I will get releases for everybody in your class if I can come in one afternoon and cast Zachary and cast Zachary's nemesis and the teacher.
That's
cool. That's a real illustrator right there doing all the stuff.
There you go. There you go. And yet that is the book that, I wish I could re-illustrate. Yeah, I wish I could.
It still looks really good, though. I mean, just from the cover,
it's very generous. Maybe a little too generous, but
I'm trying to give you one up here. No, I'm kidding.
I will take the sunshine. It's fine.
Before we transitioned into Lee's big question of the day, I was over at SVSLEARN.com and I popped into the Ask the Community section of the website. And there's a really frequent topic that comes up around art block and just the nature that all of us kind of get backed up creatively sometimes. Now, this is not a thing that David and I have talked about before in the past, but I'm curious, David, when has that, or maybe when does that sort of show up for you? And like, what do you do to get around some of just that creative block?
Oh boy. Okay.
Do you have any good techniques or anything?
I have horror stories, if that'll help.
Even better.
I've never known you to be blocked. Have you ever felt blocked?
Well, it's before you and I met. So this is right out of school. So I'm finishing up my career at Micah, and I'm leaving, and they've sent me out into the world to be a professional illustrator, and I needed to fill out my portfolio. You have that classic student portfolio. And so I was like, I gave myself this little assignment. I had a little full-time job as a staff illustrator, which was going to pay my rent. Yay. And then I had, like all 24-year-olds or 22-year-olds I have evenings and weekends completely free. And sleep. Who needs that? So I gave myself this assignment of making 4 pieces. And I was like, okay, the only thing they have to be is awesome. Just
awesome.
And I just seized up, absolutely seized up, because that is a terrible thing to do to yourself, to be like, it just, I'll realize I just need 3 more pieces. And as long as they're awesome, that's great. So that, and I remember spinning my wheels. I remember just not being ready to not have the assignment, the deadline, the stuff that you have, those guardrails that force a certain level of creativity when you're in school. And so that's my biggest art block, is when I personally have too much freedom. And the real challenge was learning to give myself the parameters that allowed some level of success, some level of creativity, successful creativity, outside of this very structured environment that was college. It's one of the reasons that I've continued to be that I'm an illustrator working with clients, but really I'm working with partners, because my art director just wants to make an amazing book. My editor just wants to make an amazing book. I just want to make an amazing book. So I work well in an environment a team environment where everybody's yes-anding each other. And that is one of the reasons why I've never gone into the gallery scene. I mean, Lee, I watched you move into the art fairs and making just amazing work, and just knowing, nope, it's never going to happen, man.
Well, it's important to know where what you want to do. I mean, I think that says a lot.
Yeah. So since then, it really has been like I've just learned slowly to give myself those parameters. And teaching, one of the reasons that between you and me, one of the reasons I started teaching is my wife just got sick and tired of hearing me talk about copyright. She was like, go talk to someone else. Aren't there students who want to hear about this stuff? And I was like, I think there are. I handed it off to, but in doing so, I discovered this other thing, which is by having to clarify my own creative process, my own process of what makes for a good image or a bad image, by having to explain it to students, I got better at it. So really all I do now is just give myself a college level assignment, just at that pro level. How about you guys?
How about you, Lee?
In terms of being blocked, I mean, again, I've talked about it before. It sounds like a humble brag, but I have the opposite problem, and it is a problem that I'm we're all visual thinkers, right? But it just never stops. And so I'm not kidding, probably 400 images that I want to paint that I haven't painted yet. And so it becomes a problem of deciding what's important and what do I want to work on now. But again, I understand that sounds like, I'm never blocked. As a matter of fact, I've got an abundance of imagery.
I'm playing a tiny violin over here.
But here's my solution. And I think maybe I can weave it into that, is that you really have to understand what kind of image gets you going? Like where do you want to point your efforts towards? And I understand that so well, just for myself, and the both the themes that I really like to play with, and then the style of art that I look at is so inspiring to me. And I've whittled it down to this, like, I don't want to say it's primitive because the work, but I mean, there is a level of primitiveness to there, but the work that really gets me going is the design, like really well designed stuff that's simplistic, along with the themes that I've already kind of established for myself in a concrete way, just lead to making images and images and images and images. And then building up the people that I think are good and trying to follow in their footsteps. So when I get blocked, if I were to get blocked, I do a master copy, and then I think to myself, I don't just do the master copy. I think to myself, what did they do? And either technique wise for painting, which is one thing, or can I do a similar theme as this because I like this so much? Can I do something similar? And but it's not the same one, but it leads me down that path, and that'll lead to 2 more images that, while I'm thumbnailing, and then those 2 lead. You know what I mean? So it's not like it's just always been there, but I cultivated it over enough time to where it's not a problem. I've got enough reference. Matter of fact, here, hold on.
I mean, the silence makes for a great podcast.
Well, I like the YouTube videos where you're looking at the back of
I have images just behind me at the ready for what I want to do. I mean, it could be anything. But there's never a time where I come into my studio. What I'm showing here right now is a bunch of printouts. I just spilled probably 50 on the ground, but there's no time that I'll come into the studio and be like, oh, I don't know what to do. I've got these all sitting here. If I don't know what to do, all I have to do is turn around, and I don't have to print it. I don't have to pull it up on my phone. I don't have to send it to myself. I spent like a couple of days getting this material ready. And that's my advice to everybody is don't just wait until you sit down at your drawing table with the blank thing in front of you and be like, okay, here we go. Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking about that. I'll spend 2 days thinking I'm just going to get project reference together, themes together, materials together. I'll spend 2 days doing that. Do I have all my brushes? Do I have all my paints? If I want to paint, how quickly can I start that? And with these printed out and my workstation set up, I can come into my studio and literally be painting within 5 minutes without even thinking about what I'm going to do.
Right.
But it takes you twofold, and this is not a joke, but it takes you a couple of days to get there because you're basically kind of like feeding your brain and getting yourself in that headspace.
Oh, at least a couple of days. I mean, I think probably at the beginning of every month should be spent not creating, but gathering, hunting, gathering, and then execute. And if you do that every time, they'll be, again, you'll get to the point where you can't do it all. And it's a great place to be because all you have to do is pick. And that's how I pick now. Cause I've got so much. I'll say, I'm going to do a theme. If you look at my Instagram page, I'm just going to do boats for 2 weeks for whatever reason. I need some kind of filtering device for all of this stuff. Right. So it might be buildings, it might be bikes, it might be boats, it might be doorways, it might be whatever. But if you set yourself up with those systems in place, you never get blocked. That's my theory.
And Anthony, how about you?
That's really good advice. Yeah, I'm the opposite of you two, and I get blocked all the time. I have a lot more anxiety and probably deep-seated depression that I'm struggling with. I'm just kidding.
I was about to say, we just took a turn.
I'm a very anxious person, but I'm not depressed. But no, I generally struggle, and I go in waves. And so I talk often about how years and years and years ago, I used to ride all these really deep waves up and down.
Sure.
And in the last handful of years, I've done everything that I can to maintain just a very minimal wave. I will say, though, like when I lose momentum, it's just completely gone. It's evaporated. There is no chance of getting it back. And I find that I have to distract myself with any number of other things, whether it's really a bunch of exercise or getting into a different hobby, or even just simply walking away from this stuff for a few days and just not doing these things, because it will become enough pressure in my mind. And I think for the audience at home too. So I'm married, I have 3 kids, but I am the sole source of income. And so there's a deep seated pressure that is included in there.
Yep.
So if I then lose my creative mojo, and then if I can't find it again really quickly, then I start to mount all that pressure and all that extra anxiety. I have found for me that sketching practice has felt really good, especially in this last year. So the way that I don't have anything next to me, I don't have this whole folder of stuff that I drop on my desk like Lee does. But I started switching all of my sketching methods, and I stopped going from so I generally do ink and watercolor and Copic markers and stuff like that. And that's those are my finished tools. So what I do instead is I sketch in colored pencils, and I sketch in ballpoint pen. And it allows me to get expressive and to get creative, but to have a billion mistakes on the paper. And I'm pushing harder to kind of make a form a little bit better, rounder, bigger, that sort of thing. And there's a certain level of permission that I've been able to give myself. And it sounds like everything that all 3 of us have done is just about a little bit of mind trickery, just to allow ourselves to move forward. Because all of us are highly capable people. And I have to think that the people listening at home are the same way too. So I just had to, I just have to constantly trick myself. And I have filled, in this last year, I have filled easily, it's 13 or 14 full sketchbooks of just sketch material. And a lot of times what happens is I'll hunker down, I'll do a page while I'm thinking about something else. And then I'll instantly be able to go over to my professional work and just hammer it out. Because I've spent a little bit of time at the drawing table.
Real quick. Okay. So I'm curious, are you using that sketching as a way to unlock the creativity for the professional work? Or are you doing something like what Lee's doing because Lee, it seems like you're doing these small little sketches as the springboard, like you're going to turn those little sketches, those quick ideas into the finished pieces. Anthony, where do you land on that?
I'm looking at one of my sketchbooks right here. I'm kind of in the middle of that. So for me, I love, I'm a outdoorsy guy, so I like hiking and running and just being outside. So a lot of my creature comfort kind of stuff is just drawing outside stuff. So rocks and trees and forests and rivers and all that sort of stuff. And what I do is I get into the organic shapes of it all. And that really, really, really helps. When I have a professional project that I work on, now I have a pretty elaborate brainstorming and thumbnail process, and that I can then get to the idea super quick. And I use a lot of prompts and prompt cards to try to get my brain really cooking. And off of sort of every prompt, I come up with 4 or 5 different thumbnails, and I do them super fast. And I do not let my brain overthink it, and I just get to it. And then I come back to those a couple of days later, and I find all of these ideas that are just built up. And I can draw all of those now, which is really fun. It's just hard though. I wish I was more like you guys, but when I lose my momentum, it honestly takes me sometimes it's been weeks of me just kind of being down in the dumps a little bit, just not getting back to my groove. It's hard. Okay. I find it really hard.
And you're using just the physical act of making a mark, looking at something, drawing it, and sort of opening it up. One of the things, what I'm hearing a little bit of, and certainly something that I would absolutely recommend, and I just want to say it kind of out loud, bluntly, is that sketchbook practice, or if not a sketchbook practice, the practice of making something and then archiving it. What I didn't mention is especially now when I'm for a client-based project, kind of the prompt is there and the ideation technique sort of a little bit like you, it has this sort of series of steps. Where I continued even well into the professional career is make something cool, something that's not client-based, something that's generated by me. And it's oh my God, I could draw anything. What am I going to draw? And my version of what Lee has described is that for every client-based project, I never submit just one idea. I'm submitting 3 different options, which they pick one, and I bank 2. Well, you do that over 5, 10, 20 years. You got a bunch of images sort of hanging out that you were pretty excited about, excited enough to pitch them as a project that you can then kind of pull away. If you pop over to my website, I'm not going to mess around with the the sharing screen thing. But if you pop over to my website, there is a field with glowing balls of yarn. It's a cabin and a field at sunset with glowing balls of yarn. That was a theater poster pitch that didn't get accepted. Now, I didn't pitch it quite like that, but I loved that idea enough that I think it was 4 or 5 years later, as I'm making a new promo piece, I'm just flipping through this archive of images and being like, ooh, I could do something fun with that. And you're kind of pulling it out. Lee, you're doing the same thing by just gathering all this stuff. And then, and that's kind of why I was asking you, Anthony. Now, in your case, I got to say, you feel wildly prolific. I mean, the card game prompt that you've got going on, there it is. Yep. The card game prompt that you've got going on just feels like it's this, I mean, certainly to an outsider looking at the project, it feels like it's just this unending source of creativity. And, the challenge is just to draw this cool idea that's been, presented to you. So it's great.
Well, one of the things too, to sort of bring it full circle, is having the multiple themes. Like what you guys were talking about is staying motivated and making illustration. But as we all know, making illustration is hard because it combines two things. It combines a good concept and then all the art stuff that comes with technique. And so I also have a list. Half of my stuff that's around me is technique. I love technique. Like I love learning and I love exploring just technique by itself. And my problem that I have with a lot of art schools is while they're teaching technique, they're also wanting you to be extremely creative. And those two things don't go together. If I'm not feeling very creative, I can just settle on technique and say, hey, I want to learn to do this with watercolor. I want to try this thing that I've been thinking about, or I saw somebody else do. And so there's the technique side of it that can take up half of your time, even just making marks on a page. And then there is the concept side of stuff, and that is just thumbnailing with a pencil. And then there's the combination of those two things together. And so don't think that they're the same, because they are definitely different parts of your brain. If I'm really stuck and there's no technique thing that I really am amped about, I'll do a master copy, and I do them all the time.
Yeah, you do.
So how can that's why I don't understand, how can anyone be blocked when there is so many options at all times?
Sometimes those options, though, and I think that there's probably somebody screaming at you in their car right now. Sometimes too many options feels too much. It just feels like way too much. And just like how you have the creative ADHD of like, you want to do everything. I feel like sometimes people sit down and they're just like, I want to draw a cat. I want to draw a boat. I want to draw a horse. I want to draw a piano. No one wants to draw a piano.
Which one is it going to be?
Yeah. Like my inclination is to put all of those things into one drawing, right? Like that's just where I find the fun in things. But like people are like, there's too many things to draw, and then there's that analysis paralysis, and that's where I think people have.
But see, that's where those two planning days come in, because how I start. I'm actually glad you brought that up. So how I start my week, I don't actually come in the studio and just go, okay, I don't know what I'm doing today, and then sort through this big list.
Okay.
What I do is I establish a time where I am going to go through the stuff that I want to paint, whether that's a concept, whether that's a technique, whether it's a piece of reference I'm using or something. I go through it, and then I just assign, like David said earlier, which I think was a great quote, we should probably highlight it, that you give yourself assignments. And so I just lay them out, and I say, okay, this is what I'm doing on Monday. This is what I'm going to do on Tuesday. This is what I'm going to do on Wednesday. So I am not starting from scratch when I walk into my studio. Nice. I'm starting with a place that I already know which image I'm going to do. I already know the technique I'm going to do it with. My workspace is already set up. Yep. And so that helps a ton, because you're totally right. How do I decide between these 100 images that I've said, I like this one, I like this one, I like this one, I like this one? You know,
you're getting rid of the friction. And when we've talked about this podcast and recording video and stuff, and there's this whole concept of just creative friction. And the more that we eliminate and remove that kind of stuff, sand those edges down just a little bit, then everything kind of just goes easier and softer and faster and stuff like that. Lee, that transitions really nicely, because you're talking about how you're planning out your week, right? You wanted to introduce the concept of the big picture, or the big idea. Is that right? What if we switch over to that a little bit?
Sure.
Lee's like, no, I don't want to.
Well, my idea was, and I don't know how much time we have on it. We've been going for almost an hour, so
we're good.
We're good. Okay, so the idea that sometimes you're dabbling, sometimes you're doodling, sometimes you're making a little illustration, but in everybody's illustration career, at least I don't want to say everybody's, in my illustration career, there are times where all of a sudden you're forced to go big. And what that means is full commitment, no stops. I'll give you an example of that. When I got the partial scholarship to Art Center, I'm living in Northern California. I just started painting 4 months before, maybe 5, I don't even know. But I get this opportunity, a life change decision. Do you want to go to school here? Here's a partial scholarship. It wasn't the full scholarship that I really wanted yet. And I had to say, okay, I'm going to go, and we're going to move. We're going to quit our jobs. We're going to do. It was just a moment where you have to go big. And the same thing happened when I graduated from art school. And I decided there's no halfway measure. At some points in your career, there's no half measure. If you're going to do a Kickstarter, there's no half Kickstarter.
Right.
And so I just think it's an interesting moment. I don't even know how to frame it into a conversation, but it's a moment that we haven't really talked too much about. How do you know whether you should go all in or not? I mean, I think there's a lot of people saying, oh, I want to quit my job. Should I do it? Oh, I want to do a Kickstarter. Should I do it? How do you know? I don't know. So I'll throw that to you guys. How do we frame that?
I think, okay, go ahead, David.
No, I was literally going to say, I think he just killed the conversation, but God bless you for having something to say. Bring it on, man. Because wow,
how did that kill the conversation? I just gave multiple examples of it.
So here's the funny thing for the listeners at home and for David. Lee and I texted about this earlier today, and he's like, okay. I got it. I got the topic.
No. I said I've got a topic.
Then he punted it immediately the second I gave it to him.
I just don't know how to
I got the topic that you're going to answer, Anthony.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know how to frame it, but have you guys had those moments, and how did you make the decision?
I'm in that moment.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I'm in that moment. So Lee is frozen for me right now. He'll probably pop back up on the screen. Okay, so like I mentioned earlier, so I have had an agent in the picture book space for a bunch of years. We've had all sorts of opportunities due to a bevy of reasons. I've not made it work. Mo's made it work. I've not made it work. At the moment, I've had to pause my picture book, my graphic novel career to go all in on the Chaotic Draw Along, which is my weekly live stream. It is my card game project. We're expanding that out into workbooks, into coloring books, and I am trying to build an empire around creative card games and getting people to draw like they would draw in their childhoods. So taking all of these 40, 50, 60-year-old people that I meet and reminding them that it's okay and you have my permission, you don't need my permission, to draw like you're 8 years old again. And that's what my draw along really represents. I've had to pause a lot of my other stuff to go super hardcore all in. A year ago, I launched the Kickstarter for it. It was a success by my standards. We got to print all of our product. I got to pay all of my vendors. I had released it on time. We then launched in April of a year ago. So we're coming up on the 1-year anniversary. It's been a very moderate success, of which I've been able to pay my mortgage with a couple of times, which has been very handy. And now we're in the phase, and Lee and I've been dodging Lee for lunch for like 2 weeks right now because
making me so mad.
He's like, Anthony, I'll even pay. I'm like, I don't even want you to pay right now. I'm too busy to do this. But I'm in the phase where I'm releasing my second deck, 2 expansion packs, and in 2 new standalone decks that can work with the main deck, but it can stand alone on their own, along with the workbooks and the coloring book products, because we need product to be able to sell. And so everything else has kind of been pushed off to the side. And then my whole identity is now kind of just becoming the Chaotic Draw Along, as opposed to the guy who streams, the guy who teaches, the guy who does picture book projects and stuff like that, the guy who takes freelance work. Now I am just kind of the identity of the Chaotic Draw Along. And it's probably going to be like that for the next year or two. And like every day, it's the only thing I think about almost every day right now. And
So is that
really
the
love it.
product of the full choice where you have to go all in? Is that it really does sort of encompass you? It envelops you where you can't dabble anymore. It's like it directs you once you make the call to do it.
So I want to
can
ask.
see David. Yeah, David wants to ask.
Yeah, I got. Well, okay. So you described it, and Lee, you identified it. Now, I guess my question, I'll be the proxy for the listener here.
Yeah.
Anthony, what was it in the creation where you were like, this is it?
Right.
Was it the fact that it
right.
just sucked up? Was it a recognition that it was just taking up all of your mental space, and that didn't bother you? Was it a financial, like, okay, I've cut this check, I got to make this work? Yeah. Where was it?
Yeah, so the whole thing started for me, and again, I think this is like, obviously this is a specific example, but I think most everyone at home right now can just tailor make this to their own project. Is that I had, with no other reason or necessity behind it, started a live stream to do this weird event, and it was just a fun way for people to get together on a Friday for a couple hours and make really terrible things, but then have permission to make those terrible things.
Okay, yep.
And then after about 6 months, people consistently just kept saying, like, I really love this Friday thing that you do. I wish you did this more often, or I wish I could do this at home when you weren't around, when I wasn't live streaming and broadcasting. And boom, that was the moment. That was the moment, because people were finding value in it. I was enjoying it. I was making just a little bit of money from it. And that's when I knew that I needed to put that amalgamation, that constellation of stuff together and try to make a product out of it. And then we workshopped that product for, the better part of like 6 to 8 months. And then fully brought it into existence over that period, using a lot of testing and a lot of people in my online community to make sure that it was going to work. Now I'm in the phase of the all-in portion of it, in terms of, I was talking to my audience here recently. I really want to do a Kickstarter for this project, but in terms of for the next big wave 2, but I'm also backed up against the clock. And even though it's March right now, I'm already thinking about Christmas, and I'm thinking about Christmas sales and stuff like that. And I'm thinking about my lead cycles, and I'm thinking about newly applied tariffs via the United States government. And I'm thinking about all of these things that are sort of creeping. So my all-in-ness right now is that we're going to launch a big crowdfunding project for this in either June or July, but I'm not going to wait for permission. I'm going to pre-print everything myself, and I'm going to pay for it all myself. I'm going to and we're talking like the printing quotes are between $30,000 and $40,000 of just straight revenue that I have to plunk into this. But I know that I have an audience just based on sales and stuff, because I want to do a Kickstarter or a crowdfunding. I want to have it be whatever success it's going to be. Moderate success is totally fine. Just breaking even's fine. But then I want to deliver that product immediately. So the rest of my sales cycle is so rock solid for the fall, for Christmas, and then we can get into that slow part of 2026, I think, right? And so I have product basically complementing me for the entire next 12 to 18 months. And we're doing it all right now. And so that is like kind of the definition of like going big and going all in. Because if it doesn't work, I'm living on one of your couches.
Well, that's sort of the nature of that, right? Is the all in has no safety net, or if it does, it's marginal. Yeah. But I did catch a bit of a pattern. If I look at the small sample size of me like going to college or something like that, or you doing the cards, the common denominator there, it's just a hypothesis at this point, so you guys tell me if I'm wrong, but there's indicators of success that are a precursor to going all in that have to be there. For example, like when I was going to go to school, I got the partial scholarship. So it wasn't like, hey, I have nothing going and I'm just going to quit everything and just do art. Yeah. And then when you did that, you knew that there's some kind of financial viability because there's already the trickle coming in and you're trying to open the valve, so to speak. So, maybe that's the precursor to ramping up to making the decision. Because I mean, we do get a lot of questions like, hey, I want to quit my full-time job. I just want to do art. But maybe that precursor is what this discussion is. It's like the segue amount of success that sort of needs to be there to guide the going all in moment. David, did you have that too?
Well, I just want to. I think there's something I want to add to what you're describing, because I sat there and I'm listening to everything that Anthony's saying, and that sounds like my nightmare. So no, and I think this is really useful.
Yeah, no,
and,
this is especially for the broader audience, because I'm more the business guy on this show versus the picture book illustrator. Yeah,
no, I think it's fantastic, and I watched the guys set up the SVS set up the Self-Publishing Pro, and I have a sense of it. So I think, Lee, one of the other things that is important is, not only are you excited about it, so you got this partial scholarship and there's that excitement, or you get some positive feedback, but having it suck up all of your mental real estate isn't terrifying. Like that should also be exciting. My own version of that is the all in on writing and realizing where my problems were. Like, I want that. I am deeply envious. I am incredibly proud and deeply envious of my students who graduate from PNCA and then are writing and illustrating their own books. I mean, that's my dream as an instructor. I could not be more thrilled for them as creative people, but it is not something that I've had. And so I'm just like, I want that. I want it. You know what I mean? And
right, there's not the fear isn't there as much
there
as
it is.
drive, but you're not having to make a all-in type decision, although you are making it. I guess it depends on what the downside of the all-in decision is. If the downside of your all-in decision is that you just don't sell the manuscript and you go to the next one, right? That's like what's the worst case scenario? Whereas,
I don't.
Some of them have higher risk.
Right. No, that's totally true. That's absolutely true. But you reject other projects. In Anthony's case, he's saying no to these other aspects.
Right.
Of his
opportunity cost. Right.
Right. You going to art school, you said no, because I believe, if I remember correctly, feel free on your background, but you were working as a designer at the time. Yeah.
That's right. It's half and half, but yeah, some
photographer, designer, and so
I thought it was dumpster salesman. But never mind.
That's what it was. So you gave up all those dumpsters in favor of art school, which is
some would say he set them on fire, but
okay. So I guess another point that I'm saying is that sometimes these decisions aren't going to be without risk and without they're not going to be fail safes. There's going to be some risk involved. And I don't know. I mean, we just don't talk about risk. And, we always talk about it in terms of reward because we're almost always talking about this stuff in hindsight, but man, there's so much stuff where you're like, oh, this better work. I mean, like my tarot deck is an example of that, or Anthony's project, where these self-publishing projects are interesting because it's your money. All of a sudden, advertising becomes very, very serious, and every dollar becomes very serious because, like, for me to launch my tarot deck just at the Kickstarter level, I'm 30 grand in at the starting point. When I did an art fair in Sausalito, California, just outside of San Francisco, I was $5,000 in before I turned on the car to go there.
Yeah,
and that is terrifying, and I just think it should be acknowledged that these moments exist, and you got to either roll with them, with the success, or deal with the failure and try to change it. But there are these moments where you're going to have to go all in. And, up to this point, we're talking a little bit about financial risk and stuff like that, but there's also time and effort where you got to make that decision. And the moment where we decided to move to Southern California and go to Art Center, I was all in. I mean, I told myself for 5 years, I'm going to give this and I still give it everything I have, but in a different capacity. That was the true morning to night, every day, 7 days a week. I'm in this for like 100%. And I think sometimes you have to commit that much to something.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think because I suspect right now, just being on the podcast for the last few years and just knowing people, there's somebody breathing into a paper bag right now, hyperventilating at the idea of all of this. And there's also somebody who has never made a professional piece of art right now, who's planning on putting $40,000 into a product. First of all, hold on, just pause. It's going to be okay. I promise you, it's going to be okay. I think that these all-inninnesses that we're talking about, they stack. And I think it's very viable to say maybe a first initial all-in is that you're going to just try to focus on drawing for 5 minutes a day for the next 30 days. You're all in for those 5 minutes
there you go.
for 30 days.
That's a good point.
And then maybe a couple months later, you're all in on posting on social media 1 day a week for 52 weeks. You're all in. What ends up happening is that those small wins and successes and that repetitiveness starts to build and build and build and build. It's like you're pushing the snowball down the hill, and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. That's kind of, I think, where a lot of us are at in our careers right now, is that we've just been doing this for long enough that our all-ins seem massive, but it's not as massive as, for me, I mean, scary, but it's not as massive as what it was like compared to like 2 years ago, because I'm scaling up to it. So
right. I mean, that's a great point. And I guess the whole reason I'm not trying to give someone a heart attack or make more pressure for you, but my point is to dispel the myth that I hate, which is the artist, that it's always fun. It's always easy.
Oh God.
It's always artistic. And it's almost like the person in the beret who's painting outside a cafe. Like, it's so stereotypical. And it's filled with sometimes these decisions where you don't know what to do. And I just don't want people, and I also don't want people to think that at a pro level, everything's just, I'm just going to do the thing and it's no problem and it's easy. And I'm just bringing it up because it's reality of, if we're going to do this for real, these kind of tensions and pressures come up at all levels, like Anthony's saying, even from the base decisions to other things. And it's not the stereotypical art life that we're presented with in movies and cliche,
Absolutely. No, I mean, to that end, we are coming up on the time of year. I love my job as a freelance illustrator, but right now, it's these months, tax season. I hate tax season.
My favorite.
It's not that hard. It's not that big of a deal. It's literally just go through the TurboTax, which is the way I do it, and click, and just track all the stuff and make sure you don't miss anything. It is the thing that stresses me out, and I have seriously considered, to that end, to kind of what I was identifying with what Anthony's doing. Like, he's talking about all these things that doesn't stress him out. I mean, not that you're completely compensated, but like, it takes up this mental real estate, but it's something you can manage and deal with. That's my version of that is much smaller, in that it's just the taxes that I have to do every year. But if I had that lovely sort of full-time job where the taxes were pulled out and it was nice and easy and I wasn't tracking all my expenses, my life would be easier. And I've seriously thought, I only ever think about it right now. But I'm all in on freelancing. And so this part that is not fun, that is deeply unpleasant for me, it doesn't have to be, but it is, that's just something that I've decided to manage in the same way that, I think as we're talking about all these things, the thing that you sacrifice or the additional, the part that isn't fun that you take on isn't insurmountable. And I think that's the different for everybody.
Yeah. It's true. It's true. What do you guys think of the chat? The chat is going, what are they talking about? So like, what do you, I'm just curious to see how they feel about this subject. And at the student level, I mean, I had these same anxieties of, what do I do? Like sometimes you just don't know, the path is unclear and you just have to dive in and make the choice.
That's where I think that's where community comes in. I mean, this sounds like a really cheap ploy to get people over to the website, but I think online communities really thrive in the stories of other people. And once you see somebody else who's doing something, you feel like you have an ounce of confidence to try that same thing.
Dude, there is no truer words than that. I mean, I think that's why, I'm always, every podcast, I'm going to bring something back into skateboarding. But
good, I can relate. Bring it on, man.
Everyone can relate to this. But when you see somebody do something, it all of a sudden gives you the permission to do it. And just as an analogy, when there are kids that are 3 years old that are doing runs in skateboard ramps that would have won a pro competition when I was competing a long time ago. Yeah. And they're 4 and 5 years old. And the only reason I think that happened is because now we have YouTube, now we have Instagram Shorts and all this stuff. And they see people doing it like, oh yeah, people can do that. I can do that. And there's a huge shift, I think, in mental resistance once you see somebody else do it. And we have seen some of the success to bring it back to our community. Erin, for example, a couple of weeks ago got an agent, and it's so exciting to see her career just stepping up. And we've seen it a few times though with Shinji and a bunch of different cast of characters that we've had at SVS. And I think when somebody sees it, they'd see, oh, that person was a student. Now they're a blossoming pro. And it makes it accessible. So I think that's a good point.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to, without divulging people's names, again, we do broadcast live over at svslearn.com once a month for these podcasts, which is really cool. So without divulging specific names, one person is saying that they're freaking out just a little bit and that they're planning on going all in when their job fades away in August.
Awesome.
Awesome. Here's a cool thing. You have a lot of time, and you have time to to prioritize and to put your house in order, so to say. And as long as you have a significant plan, and that plan could just be like, I'm just going to draw every day. That was my plan when I quit my job. You just get momentum. And I think that's what humans need at times. Another person said that they're with David. They're also freaking out.
About taxes?
Sorry, everybody. I thought it was an interesting topic, but sorry if I freaked everybody out.
God, what a downer, man. What a downer.
It's not a downer. It's exciting, but it's part of the life. And that's what we talk about. We keep it real.
But we do. I do think especially with all of us who live much more on the edge of financial freedom, and most of us are not very free at the moment because of taxes. I also think that there's illustrators out there that don't need to jump directly into our shoes of being these crazy entrepreneurs or these full-time freelancers, that there are so many creative jobs and paths out there where you can get a steady Eddie and a W-2 and a tax professional and somebody who does take out your insurance or helps you with your insurance. So there's so many of those other things, but you still need all of your foundational stuff. Right. And then over time, as you get really comfortable, because again, you're all in, but you're stair-stepping your all-ins, then you can make those choices. You don't have to do them all at once. We can have baby steps.
Are you saying you go half in on your all-in?
It was more like a quarter in to a half all-in, which would eventually lead me to a 3/4 and then a 5/8. But yeah, I'm all in to this conversation.
That is 100% true. I every so often I think back to as I was making the transition. So I got graduated, got full-time staff positions. I'm pretty sure, whatever it was, 23, 24 me was fairly obnoxious to listen to because I had this full-time job, but I had my first couple books on the side that I was, staying up till 2 or 3 in the morning, sleeping for 4 hours, getting back to my job. And that was my identity. I had the staff, but my identity was freelance illustrator. And I'm pretty sure I told everyone I knew that, hey, I'm here, but I'm actually
I'm not here.
Other thing. Yeah, exactly. And I guess, that is for anybody who's thinking about that. Like, it isn't just you're either have a job or you're a freelancer. You can be mentally in the space where you want to be 5 or 10 years from now. Yeah. Even while you're making that transition.
Well, that's always my advice for the segue point. There is, you start with the full-time job with the art on the side, and then you try to scale back that you don't quit the full-time job. You just go from 40 hours to 30 hours, and now you got 10 hours. You just start sort of moving the weights off the scale on one side and moving it to the other.
Right.
Yeah. See, that was a good topic, Anthony.
Well, I think with David's help, made something out of it.
Buddy. Yeah.
Well, I think David reframing the question is probably something that was really helpful.
Let's talk about agonizing fear.
Yeah, that'll be. Oh God, buddy, I could fill up 6 or 7 hours right now. I don't want to really bum everybody out. This has been an awesome program, David. It's so fun to be able to, because again, we've sent emails, we've text messaged, but it's really fun to be able to hang out with you in this space, especially with Lee chiming in every once in a while, ruining the conversation. So.
Well, I'm going to gush for just a second, Anthony. Man, as soon as you started joining the podcast,
you started listening again?
The listens went up.
Actually good.
Just went right up. I vividly remember, I think you made like a music drop, like you made some music cue in the first episode. And I was like, yes, this is what we need more of, music cues in the podcast. So anyway, great job, man.
But do you know the only reason that they invited me on the podcast and B kept me around for a little bit? Because I was the only one who could turn on a microphone and had a camera. That was the only reason that they let me on.
Going all in.
Yeah.
Hey, who cares what the bar is, as long as you hopped right over it.
So when the podcast had to get edited, it was just like the editor was just like, God, it's so easy to edit his audio because it doesn't sound like he's talking through a soup can. And that was the reason that Jake kept asking me to. And now 3.5 years later, now here we are. So it's been pretty great.
Yeah, it has been fun having you, David, and we're going to try to have you on a lot more. We got a good cast of characters now. I think at SVS to rotate between. It's fun.
Yeah. It is great. Yeah, I find it as a listener. It's just somebody who's been listening to the podcast for years now. And violently disagreeing with you guys as I'm doing laundry. It's very one-sided. So anyway, it's great. Thanks.
We should just make it that he always gets to hear when Lee is on the podcast. Like maybe you're just on the phone line and that we can patch you in, even if it's not your episode that you're on. So you can argue with him and like bring him back to reality.
I disagree.
Nothing would make me happier. Nothing would make me happier.
Well, I'll go ahead and read us out. I want to say thank you to everybody for joining us today. We will be back next week. When does that James Gurney interview drop? Do you think it's already dropped by the time this one goes out?
Jake has that schedule. I'm not sure when it airs. Sometime in the next year.
Yeah, he runs. Yeah, Jake runs things. We just sort of ruin everything and then admit that we ruin everything. So. All right, here we go. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. 3-Point Perspective is made possible by SVSLEARN.com, where becoming a great illustrator starts. Your hosts have been me, Anthony Wheeler, David Hohn, Lee White. Podcast has been produced by Daniel Tu. Put your brush down. Special thanks to team manager Preston Smith, keeper of the curriculum Austin Shirtlift, show notes wrangler Lily Howe, chief operations officer Lisa Font, and our illustrator has been Annalise Black. Now, go draw something.
Draw something.
Don't whisper like that. It's creepy when you do it.
Don't whisper.
Oh, like a whole ASMR stream would honestly ruin everything. Yeah.
That's how it sounds in my nightmare.
How did you two have a studio together? He told this story on the podcast once. Where didn't you guys get into a whole kerfuffle in the studio one time, like blood and police and all sorts of stuff?
Well, you do realize that at one point the studio was in a basement.
Yeah.
It was, yes, it was terrifying.
And then did somebody try to break in?
We were. Well, he did. That's true. And we were held hostage for
that's right.
like 45 minutes. Yeah.
It's just a typical day in the life of an illustrator.
only if you hang out with Lee.
Yeah,
that's true. I am a magnet for weird stuff like that. I mean, I'm not kidding. I've had it happen over and over. Not being kidnapped, of course, but just weird, out of the ordinary things seem to.
It's like the least surprising thing ever. But I do remember from that podcast, David, weren't you the one who sort of were the voice of reason, who kind of negotiated with the guy? I can't remember how that all worked.
Oh God, I blocked most of that out. Whatever Lee said happened is probably what happened.
So I mean, how that played out was, I remember distinctly being on the ladder and David he had come in panicked, of course, you know what I mean? And David's like, there's a sink, he was bleeding and there was a sink, that we had a utility sink in there, and David's like, there's a sink, you can go over there and clean up, just relax. He was just like level-headed, and I was starting to grab my hammer, like that was going to do something. I don't know what I was going to do with the hammer, but that felt like the right move to me. And David just talked him down, like much better than the hammer. That probably would have ended badly.
So all I remember is that the police did show up with the dogs, and Lee got out
ransacked the
first.
studio.
Lee got out first. Like, I'm back. I'm still down there. Lee's outside. And I'm like, what's happening now? Like, why did Lee go out
then
first?
they said, hey, can you get him out? And that's when I remember yelling down, hey, David, can you come up here for something?
Oh, that's right.
I wonder
you got me out. Okay, thanks, man. That I had forgotten. So I appreciate that.
You forgot that he saved your life, and you don't even want to give him credit for that?
No, I'm giving him full credit right now.
Heroes don't wear capes, and
they wear baseball caps.
Crepes.
Also, I have a question for you two specifically. Are you in the same office right now? We have the same beige wall. We have the same shelves with the same books and prints.
I was
behind.
first with the bookshelf.
You were. I absolutely stole this one. I thought that was great. At some point, that's going to transition to bookcases.
Ooh.
like what you got going on, Anthony. Like that's the dream. But at the moment, I am not doing any woodworking. So
yeah,
we are. Lee's like right next door. I'm gonna. I
wish you could just reach in and grab him.
Let me tell you another story that we haven't really divulged too much about on the podcast. Is that so? David and I shared quite a few different studios. That one was the basement version of that,
sure.
And then we shared a commercial space with a bunch of other creative professionals like art directors and graphic design. There was one of the girls there was a book designer for all these publishers in New York, and then there was a bunch of architects there, and that was super fun. It was called Tin Pod, and that was in Portland as well. And then David and I ended up renting our own commercial space on this very high traffic commercial street, and so we opened this gallery called Wonderland Gallery, and we would have gallery openings and stuff. We got a bunch of different artists to show there, and while we didn't do it for a ton of time, it was super fun. It was a lot of work. It was this old Victorian building, but it was cool.
Yeah, that was a great space. We timed it very badly. About a year after we cleared that space, the best children's bookstore in Portland moved in.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, right literally next door.
Just like, what is happening? It was empty the entire time we're there. We move out. Great bookstore comes in.
Oh, my
that's
goodness.
We Mean Books. A little shout out to them. They're still there. And amazing owner and great shop. It's on Alberta Street in Portland. But yeah, we had that. We ran this gallery, and it was super fun. I remember we were going to have a show. This will speak to David's personality. We're going to have a show. And, we're showing some originals and some prints and stuff. And David's like, okay, well, how many pieces are we going to show? And it was split between like 3 different rooms of this Victorian house. And so we had this front room and then each of our studios. And so probably 10 to 12 pieces. And then David's like, okay, I'm going to make all my frames by hand.
Oh God. Yeah. That's
and so and I'm like, dude, I'm going to Michael's. I'm buying mine. I was done that afternoon.
But he's using primitive methods, right? Like a planer from 1780. Or like,
I grabbed a tree from backyard.
Yeah, somebody had a huge mustache right then too. It looked like an old classic woodworker. Like
a lot of flannel. Wore a lot of flannel.
There was a flat cap. Yeah.
Yeah. There was a whole.
But
thing.
he made all the frames. It was impressive. Yeah. It took weeks. And he's then sanding and staining and finishing it. But that's the kind of person he is. I mean, we both remodeled homes in Portland because you couldn't afford one that's not, or that was already done. But, seeing David go through it, he's the kind of guy who's like, I need some cabinets. Okay, where's my saw? I'm going to make my cabinets. A different level.
So slow. If I would just be faster, I'd have cabinets.
Then you could get 2 dummy books out a year. Oh, we're talking about cabinets. Yeah.
No, you wrap it up.
I know somebody who's finished 4 picture book projects in the last like 18 months, and I'm just like, I haven't even made a dummy. Like
That blows my mind.
I know,
and it's like that prolific. It's impressive,
and it's like that high quality work. There's nothing getting phoned in.
Who is this?
I can't tell you who this is.
Why? You're not
divulging. Some of these projects are not available for public consumption yet.
Oh.
Not the project, the person.
I'll tell you the person later.
Everybody thinks you're lying now.
I don't think one person. No one's even listening.
Everyone knows it's Dan Santat.
Yeah, right.
Everybody knows. Or it's Lou and Pham. It's one of those two. They are the most prolific illustrators I've ever come across. And so good.
You know what's funny is Dan Santat. So my elementary school that my kids go to, our librarian's incredible, and she brings in like just these wonderful author illustrators. She brought Judd Winnikin a few years ago, and yada yada. She didn't tell me though that Dan Santat was coming in, and so like the day after, I was in the library, like shelving and doing stuff. She's like, "Oh yeah, Dan Santat was." I was like, "Really? Yes, yesterday? Oh, okay."
And was the presentation good?
Yeah.
Was it funny? Was it entertaining?
Was he as charming as he is on Twitter?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And she's like, "Yeah, all of those." Yeah, no, it's such a good presenter. Whole deal. Yeah, fantastic.
I was very jealous. I was very jealous.
That happened in your library. That's all that matters.
Yeah. Like my kids got to go to it. They're like, "Have you ever seen this guy?" I was like, "Oh my gosh, yes, I have seen that guy before."
That's awesome.
What are you guys up to this afternoon?
I'm finishing the last demo for my watercolor workshop, which has been exhausting to get to. It's been so many paintings.
Yeah.
And starts and stops, and it's a lot.
Leveling up, as someone who was in the room when you were like, "Hey, you know what? I want to watercolor." I was in the room when he did that. He's like, "I think watercolor would be fun." And the leveling up that has happened from that to this, to what you're creating for this class, honestly, I don't know if I said it clearly enough, but holy crap, it's amazing.
I appreciate it. I mean, like we were talking about earlier, one of the best things you can ever do if you want to learn something is teach it. And both the in-person workshop that I did and then this class, I knew all this stuff in a vague way, but when you go to teach it, you get so specific between option A and option B. Why would you choose option A over option B? Well, here's why. You know what I mean? And I may not have known that. So like, I appreciate that compliment. I'm definitely learning as I go. You know,
the learning will never stop, right? I mean, that's one of.
I don't think so. Yeah. There's always new things to conquer. You know,
that's fantastic. No, my afternoon is. Speaking of that, I have a new class that I'm teaching. It is visual techniques. The idea being mark making. So every 2 weeks, it's a new medium. This next project is printmaking. Oh, nice. And so the demo, printmaking is huge, but I'm limiting it. The ones that I'm demoing are the ones that are kind of DIY in the room. You know, you don't need a giant press. You don't need huge stones, that kind of stuff. Right. So Lee knows this one. It's monotypes. So I'm doing monotypes and lino cuts.
Yeah.
And I'm just
Are you doing that technique that we learned
Lino's cool.
The grad program? So we had Gary Kelly was the one who showed us how to do this.
Yep. I'm passing along Gary Kelly's techniques.
Man,
because that guy's freaking awesome.
Well, you got good at him too, but he's a master of them. Yeah. Absolutely.
Was that somebody that you guys taught with?
You don't know Gary Kelly?
Mm-mm.
Oh my God!
Don't make him feel bad, man.
Oh, what are you doing? Whoa!
I don't know anything about it.
No, he's Gary Kelly's kind of one of the superstars of editorial illustration primarily. Okay. Although he's moved into children's books a little bit with his picture books that aren't for kids. If you get a chance, Kelley.
Okay.
And I don't think he doesn't teach except at like a summer program. Oh, right, in the MFA program. Sorry, it's in the MFA program for illustration. Anyway, but he does pastels and monotypes, and his monotypes are just masterful.
Yeah.
But speaking of all in, he went and got himself, like, he was like, I like monotypes, and now he has a press in his studio and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, his
that
work
dude's
is
not kidding around.
Pretty good, huh?
It is pretty good, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mess up on one of those. Are you depressed?
Oh God. And I'm gonna go.
Can you explain that? Can you explain that joke to everybody?
See, he's got a printing press, and then when it goes bad, it's a printing depress.
I'm depressed. I'm just depressed.
I'd like Emerson. Can I get an Emerson eye roll? I know he's giving them to you.
Oh, that's where the bruh comes from. That's what he says now. Bruh.
I know.
Well,
dude, my kids. Come on. Constantly. My kids call me chat, like the chat room, like I'm like
right. Hey, chat.
Like they're the streamer and I'm their chat room. So yeah, it's a level of disrespect that I enjoy, kind of.
That's a level of disrespect that I didn't understand. So yeah, I would have taken it as a compliment.
I'll bring a 16-year-old kid into the studio. He'll teach you all about that. Yeah, he got you. He got you. Well, this has been
All
good,
right,
guys.
yeah.
We should try to petition to do more of these, huh?
Heck yeah. It's a good
Sounds
crew.
great.
If there's anybody left in the chat room here, thanks for hanging out with us today. It's been really fun.
Yeah. Thanks, you guys. And thanks for the questions and stuff and the constant presentation of your work on the community. We always love seeing the stuff you guys are working on and getting into, and your successes and all the thumbnails, everything along the way. It's really cool. So keep posting.
Yes, sir. All right. So you've got the recording on your side?
Yes.
Okay. That was the least reassuring of all time.
I think it just happens with technology. It's recorded somewhere.
How does Daniel get it to then do something with it?
I don't know.
Okay.
Technology is the answer to that question.
I am so grateful that you have your job. Jane, thanks for hanging. You too, Kim. Goodbye, Kirsten and Mabel. Appreciate you guys. All right, fellas. I'll see y'all later.
Bye, guys.
Bye.